Wearing that, and you think you're staying here? Maybe he's about to die, wants to splurge on one night of luxury before he goes. The old man just stood there, white hair, tattered clothes, a limp in his step, worn-out shoes barely holding together, and a folded letter, crumpled from time and travel, clutched tightly in his hand. What no one knew was that he had come to keep a promise, one he made more than 40 years ago. That afternoon, the sunlight spilled gently across the polished stone tiles in front of a five-star hotel downtown. The kind of place where cars park themselves, where guests step out of sleek black sedans with digital keys and designer bags. And into that world came an old man, quiet, unnoticed, unimportant, Walter Hayes, 84 years old, hair tousled by the breeze. His body was wrapped in a faded military uniform, worn thin at the knees, frayed at the shoulders where the stitching still whispered of battles past. In his right hand, he clutched a thick folder and a letter, folded into quarters, its edges yellowed, its paper soft from age. He walks slowly. Each step is deliberate, his left foot dragged just slightly, as if each movement stirred memories long buried. He didn't raise his head much, didn't meet many eyes. His gaze stayed locked on the front desk beyond the glass doors, because that was where he hoped to find the one person he came for. Not to ask for charity, not to stay the night. He came to fulfill a promise, one that had waited 4 long decades. But before he could even reach the revolving door, a voice stopped him. Cold, sharp, sorry, you can't come in. A young security guard, uniform crisp, stepped into his path. He didn't ask what the old man needed, didn't look at the documents or the weathered letter in his hand. He just saw the ragged clothes, the limp, the age that no longer belonged in a place of chandeliers and velvet ropes. This hotel, the guard added, doesn't accept guests without a reservation. Walter didn't move. He simply said, softly but clearly, I'm here to speak with the owner of this hotel. Please, notify him for me. No response, no reaction. Moments later, a receptionist stepped out from behind the desk. Their heels clicked against the tile floor, her eyes scanning him from head to toe. Then, without even blinking, she said, And who do you think you are? Asking to see the owner of this hotel. There was no need for an answer, because what followed, it wasn't a question. It was a mockery, sharp, direct, cruel. Wearing clothes like that, and you think you're booking a room? Let me guess, an old man like you, knocking on death's door, just wants to experience luxury one last time before you go. Behind her, another employee stifled a laugh, pretending to whisper, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Walks with a limp like that. Probably a thief who got caught and beaten up. Now showing up here, trying to score a free night. Maybe. A few guests waiting for their cars glanced over. No one spoke up. No one stepped in. Only one woman shook her head, let out a long, disappointed sigh, and turned away. A young intern pulled out his phone. He didn't say a word, just held it up and started recording. His eyes stayed locked on Walter. His thumb tapped the screen, capturing the moment, then quickly dropped it into the staff group chat. The caption appeared seconds later. Grandpa Cold War cosplay wants to meet the CEO. Check out this serious-looking vagabond. Laughter emojis popped up immediately. No one stopped to ask what he was holding. No one noticed the quiet flush rising in his eyes. And it wasn't anger. It was shame. Not for being insulted, but because he had once believed this was the last place he needed to go. That this was the final stop on a promise made over 40 years ago. A promise entrusted to him by a man who died in his arms. And now, the door had closed, not because of what he carried, but because of how he walked and what he wore. Clothes that didn't shine, shoes that didn't gleam, a uniform that no longer fit the lobby's marble floor. His full name was Walter Samuel Hayes. But no one at that hotel knew. Not a single person had the faintest clue that the man they had just turned away at the lobby. I was once the senior logistics advisor for a special operations task force. A man who survived 3 military campaigns, the details of which are still classified until 2070. Back in the 1970s, During one of the most turbulent military crises on the Eastern Front, when supply lines were blocked, when convoys were ambushed, when entire battalions went hungry for days, he was the one in charge of keeping them alive. Not with bullets, not with medals, but with maps, radios, and trucks that had to weave through forests so dense one wrong turn could mean 3 days of starvation for hundreds of soldiers. He commanded that route, and he never spoke about it. When he retired, Walter didn't write a memoir, didn't attend galas, didn't request benefits or parades. He left quietly. He moved to a small farm with his wife, a former combat medic who'd served right beside him. Together, they lived a quiet life, and when she passed, Walter moved even farther away, to a place where no one knew his name, where no one asked about his past, no social media, no bank accounts, no close relatives, just a small wooden box that sat on a worn kitchen table. Inside were the only things he'd carried from that former life: a faded photo of his old unit, a broken lighter, a folding knife dulled by time, and a letter that had never been sent. The letter. It was written by hand, shaky handwriting, smudged ink, on the edge of a hospital cot beneath a blood-stained canvas in a jungle no map dares to name. It was the kind of letter you write when you know you're not going home. The final line was bold, urgent, etched with the desperation of a man racing against death. If I don't make it, please deliver this to my son, the only family I have left. Signed, First Lieutenant Peter Lawson, Unit 3rd, Forward Support Battalion. Date of death, June 19th, 1983. Location redacted. Walter kept that letter for 41 years. He sealed it in plastic, slipped it into a cloth envelope, added moisture-proof tape, and every time he moved, it stayed in the left chest pocket of whatever jacket he wore. Over the years, he wrote dozens of letters, sent them to Peter Lawson's last known address. But the family had long since moved after the war. No forwarding address, no records, no trace. No one knew if Peter's son was still alive, or if he ever had been, and slowly. The world forgot Peter Lawson, forgot the letter, forgot the promise. Everyone except for Walter Hayes. Then, just a few months ago, while shopping for groceries, Walter paused in front of the magazine stand, and there it was, a feature article, a young businessman, founder of one of the most prestigious hotel chains in the country. He was recently honored for his charitable work supporting veterans. The name stopped Walter cold. Daniel Lawson. The last name, the age, the sharp, familiar jawline. But it was the small caption beneath the photo that made Walter's knees go weak. Only son of the late Latiwe Peter Lawson. MIA, 1983, classified operation. That was it. That was the moment. And this is why an 84-year-old man, dressed in a tattered military uniform, limping through the sunlit sidewalks of downtown, carrying a thick folder and a yellowed letter, showed up at a 5-star hotel he'd never seen before. He didn't come to ask for a room, didn't come to seek pity, didn't want special treatment. He came to return a promise, one made in blood, one time, never erased. Because to him, a promise doesn't expire. Only people forget how to keep one. Walter was still standing there, right in front of the hotel entrance. But he couldn't go in. No one asked why he was there. No one asked what he needed. All that surrounded him was silence, and the kind of stares that treat you like clutter in a place designed to shine. A group of young guests waiting for their taxi stepped out and caught sight of him. One of them scoffed, loud enough to be heard. Since when did this hotel start letting Cold War cosplayers in for fun? Another laughed and added, Nah, probably wandered over from a nursing home. That limp looks like he got jumped and beaten half to death. Probably just looking for somewhere quiet to die. The laughter rippled outward like some twisted inside joke, shared without permission, without shame. A bellman rolled a luggage cart past Walter. He gave him a quick once-over, then grimaced. Sir, please step aside. You're making guests think we've got a beggar at the door. Walter didn't say a word. He didn't argue. He simply nodded, barely, and shifted to the side, his left foot dragging, his shoulder trembling ever so slightly. as if even he wanted to disappear, to make sure he no longer burdened the polished image of the place. Inside the reception area, a well-dressed front desk staffer, still smiling at a guest, leaned into a radio. "We've got someone outside dressed like an old soldier, torn up clothes, limping, just standing by the entrance. Kinda suspicious. Just a heads up for security." Nearby, a young security guard read a message on the staff group chat, sent just moments earlier by the intern. "Grandpa Cold War cosplay wants to meet the hotel owner. Gasto." Attached is a photo, taken from behind the glass. Walter head bowed under the afternoon sun, still clutching that thick folder, and that yellowed, folded letter, the caption that made the whole staff group chat laugh, plot twist. Grandpa floats into the air and goes, "I'm actually a retired general." No one thought there was anything wrong with that. No one paused. No one felt a twinge of guilt. Meanwhile, outside, Walter still stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't walk away. He didn't call for help, because he didn't know how to begin a conversation that had waited over 4 decades to be spoken. Then a middle manager stepped outside, took one look at the scene, his jaw clenched, his steps were sharp. "Sir," he said curtly, "you cannot approach the management without a scheduled appointment. Mr. Lawson is busy. If you're here to file a complaint or request a room, please register at the side office like everyone else." Walter responded gently, his voice hoarse and thin. "I didn't come to stay. I just need to speak to Daniel Lawson. I have a letter for him," but the manager cut him off, voice rising. "Firmer, now I already told you. No appointment, no meeting. Who do you think you are, walking in here, empty-handed, dressed like that, demanding to see Mr. Lawson?" A long, tense silence followed. Then, a younger staff member nearby chimed in, not to help, but to twist the knife. "He's probably just some old man, trying to check into a 5-star hotel before he dies. One last bucket list moment or something." This time, no one laughed. Not because they suddenly understood, not because they felt empathy, but because that sentence had crossed a line, even in a place where cruelty had become casual. And yet, the one who had been humiliated the most still said nothing, still stood there, still calm, still quiet. Only one thing changed. The hand holding that yellowed letter tightened just slightly. And in those old eyes once sharp enough to read battlefield maps by candlelight, once steady enough to navigate convoys through the heart of chaos, something dimmed. The world that once relied on him to deliver life-saving supplies through mortar fire now couldn't even look him in the eye, because somewhere along the way, the world forgot how to look at someone with dignity. On the 20th floor of the building next door, beneath the glare of overhead lights shining down on a polished glass table, a high-level meeting had just wrapped up. At the head of the table stood a young man, simple shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled, confident yet calm. He was gathering his papers when a junior assistant entered the room, holding a phone, eyes wide with unease. "Mr. Daniel, I'm sorry, but there's something you need to see, now." On the screen, a video, just over a minute long, already circulating inside the hotel's internal group chat. It showed an elderly man in a faded military uniform, limping outside the front entrance. Every detail in the frame was heartbreakingly clear. Then came the voices, the mockery that had echoed so freely just minutes earlier. "Who do you think you are, asking to meet the owner of this hotel? What, you planning to die soon and just wanted to stay here once before you go?" The room fell silent. Daniel Lawson froze. His eyes locked onto the screen. His face went pale. His fingers gripped the edge of the table so tight the knuckles turned white. He whispered J. Justone name, Walter. And then he moved. He didn't grab his coat, didn't excuse himself, didn't wait. He ran, out of the meeting, down the hall, into the elevator, through the lobby. Just 7 minutes later, Daniel's private car came to a screeching stop in front of the hotel. He didn't wait for the door to open. He leaped out, stormed past the entrance, ignoring the startled stares of staff and security alike. straight through the golden doors out into the courtyard toward the figure sitting quietly on a weathered bench beneath the shade of an old tree. Walter Hayes. Still there, still silent, still holding the folder. That yellowed letter no one had dared to ask about. He wasn't looking at anyone. I wasn't watching the crowd. His eyes stayed on the ground, as if he no longer expected to be seen. And then a voice broke through the silence, familiar, shaky. No longer the voice of a man who owned hotels, but of a boy who had waited for his whole childhood for a father who never came home. Mr. Hayes. Is it really you? Walter looked up. His tired eyes shimmered with disbelief. Recognition? Daniel dropped to his knees. Right there, on the sun-warmed steps of his own hotel, my name is Daniel Lawson, son of Lieutenant Peter Lawson, my father. He used to tell me stories about you. Walter didn't say a word. He simply reached for his chest pocket. Slowly, he pulled out the letter, now darkened with age. Its edges are water-stained, its folds worn deep by time and movement. And with both hands gently, solemnly, he handed it over, as if he were passing on not just paper, but memory, legacy, a part of history no one had dared to speak aloud. Daniel took it with both hands and broke down in tears. Walter Hayes, the man his father had spoken of so often, the man he'd dreamed of meeting, was here. And yet the moment of reunion, it was also the moment he realized that this man, this hero, had just been humiliated at the doorstep of the empire he himself had built. And then, a siren, low, sharp, a black military SUV pulled up against the curb. The door opened, and out stepped a tall man in full-dress uniform, stern gaze, measured steps. Lieutenant General Charles Remington, commander of the Eastern Region, a veteran of the 1978 Golden Valley Campaign. He didn't rush. He walked straight through the front doors of the hotel, past the reception, past the security staff, past the stunned silence of every employee who had watched Walter stand alone in the sun. He stopped in the center of the lobby. His voice echoed, firm and unwavering. Who? Was it that refused entry to a former officer, who once safeguarded the lives of thousands during wartime? The room fell dead silent. No one spoke, no one moved, no one dared offer an excuse. Remington turned. He looked toward the doorway, toward the bench outside, where Daniel Lawson now sat beside the man who once saved his father's life. That man out there, he is not a guest. He is not a beggar. He is not some wandering stranger. He is a living symbol of the sacrifice our youth made for this country. There was no applause, no background music playing softly through the lobby, like it usually did on days like this. Only silence, thick, crushing, the kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes it hard to breathe, and slowly, eyes began to lower from the very people who had smiled as Walter Hayes was turned away just an hour earlier. Daniel Lawson, still kneeling beside Walter, lifted the letter to his chest and spoke. His voice broke with the weight of something he'd never expected to feel. I didn't know. I truly didn't know. My father used to tell me stories about you, the man who ran back into enemy fire, to carry out a wounded soldier whose name he didn't even know. I thought those stories only existed in books, until today. When I saw you pushed away from my own front door, behind the counter, the receptionist, the one who had once sneered, "Who do you think you are?" now stood trembling, head down, their hands clenched at her sides. Other staff members silently erased messages from the group chat. One employee stared at the very video he had once proudly shared, and deleted it. No more laughing emojis, just the shame of a memory that couldn't be erased from the mind. Then General Remington stepped forward, and did something no one expected. He raised his hand, not a casual salute, not the kind reserved for public ceremonies, but the kind that one soldier gives another a superior, when words are not enough. And then, loud and clear, he said, "Sergeant Walter Samuel Hayes, as someone who once served under your logistics command, on behalf of the Special Operations Forces. Allow me to say 3 words. Thank you, sir. No one moved. No one even blinked. Until Daniel, still beside Walter, stood and gave a quiet, unwavering order. All hotel staff, line up, no one leaves, until every single one of you has bowed your head and apologized to Mr. Walter Hayes. 10 minutes later, in front of the hotel, a line had formed. Over 30 people, receptionists, bellhops, security guards, middle managers. All are standing in silence, all bowing their heads before an 84-year-old man in a faded military uniform, limping, still holding a weathered folder and a yellowed letter pressed gently to his chest. No one spoke, no one needed to. Walter looked at each of them, one by one. He didn't scold me, didn't raise his voice. He just nodded, slowly, softly, the kind of nod that forgives, without asking for anything in return. And then he stepped inside. For the very first time, after nearly an hour of being dismissed, insulted, treated like a ghost that didn't belong. But he didn't walk in alone. Daniel was at his side, holding his hand, the way a son might lead his father home after a long, painful misunderstanding that had lasted a lifetime. Inside the hotel's VIP archive, Daniel opened a private vault himself. Inside was a journal, his father's field diary, worn leather cover, pages yellowed by time. On the final page, just a short passage. If I don't make it, find Walter Hayes. He's the reason I'm still alive today. Daniel placed Walter's letter beside it, gently, deliberately. No more words were needed, no speeches, no ceremony, just that. And it was enough for everyone present to understand that the man they had once treated like a burden was, in fact, the last living memory of a fallen hero. The next morning, Walter Hayes was gone. He didn't stay in the VIP suite Daniel had personally prepared, didn't accept the lifetime benefits, didn't take the honorary guest title the management had rushed to offer. Instead, on the small table in the hotel lounge, he left behind a handwritten note, neat, firm. Each letter is steady and bold. Seeing you grow up and succeed is already enough for me. I came here to be welcomed, and I came to fulfill one last promise. Now, that promise has been kept. Next to the note sat his room key, still untouched, never activated, and beside it, a small cloth pouch. Inside was only one thing, a rusted military-issue lighter. No one saw him leave. He simply wasn't there anymore. But the bench beneath the trees outside, the one where he had once waited in silence, now bore something new. A small bronze plaque was installed that very morning. It read, "He did not knock to be pitied. He came to keep a promise that had slept in silence." 1 week later, Daniel hosted a special gathering in the hotel lobby. No flowers, no media, just staff, every one of them, invited to hear a story about the man they had once failed to see. General Remington, now in a simple suit, stood in the center of a quiet circle and spoke of nameless operations, miraculous supply runs, and moments when Walter Hayes refused awards just so another comrade could be rescued first. And then, as he reached the final lines of Walter's life, he paused, looked at them all, and said, "Not everyone who wears a uniform wants to be honored. Some just want to be remembered by name and not be turned away because their shoes are worn." After the ceremony, Daniel made a change, a new policy. No guest, regardless of clothing, speech, or appearance, will never again be judged by how they look. Every new employee, before joining the hotel, must read the archived file of Walter Hayes. And in the center archive room, Lieutenant Peter Lawson's field diary still rests beside the yellowed letter, unlocked, unhidden, so anyone can read it. And no one ever again has to ask, who was he as for Walter Hayes? No one ever saw him return to the hotel. But now and then, someone would say they'd seen an old man wearing a faded military jacket, standing quietly at the edge of the city's veterans' cemetery, placing a hand on each headstone, one by one, never speaking, never rushing, just standing, in silence. And then, walking on. And in that silence, he became something more than a guest, more than a soldier. He became what he had always been, a quiet gatekeeper of promises never fully kept. There are people like that. People who never need to be called heroes, who doesn't stand on podiums, who doesn't need applause or medals or crowds. They just need a small corner in someone's memory to keep walking the rest of the road. If this story made you stop for a moment, if it made you breathe a little slower, then please share it. Because somewhere out there are still men like Walter Hayes being turned away just because they wore the wrong clothes. And if you believe that promises don't grow old, only people forget them, then subscribe to the channel, because we will keep telling these stories, stories of the kind ones, the silent ones, the ones who left behind echoes no one will never dent it.